So in either case, what we're dealing with is an inability or a decreased ability to utilize the sugar in your bloodstream. Okay? So what kinds of things go along with diabetes? They talk about the three cardinal signs of diabetes: mellitus, polyuria, polydipsia, and polyphagia. You can see their descriptions there. Polyuria means excessive urination. So, is there normally sugar in your urine? In a healthy person?
No.
No. Okay. But if you have diabetes mellitus and there's an excessive amount of glucose in your blood, some of it will make its way into the urine. We'll talk about why that happens more in the urinary system. But you end up with sugar in the urine. And in fact, that's where the name comes from. Diabetes mellitus means honey flow. The urine tastes sweet. Take their word for it, don't test it. Okay. That's because there's sugar in the urine. Sugar has a strong osmotic force, meaning it's pulling water in its direction. So when there's sugar in the urine, it's acting as an osmotic diuretic. It's pulling excess water out of the system. Well, if you're urinating excessively and losing water, that will lead to polydipsia, excessive thirst. And again, because you're losing the water, you're thirsty as a result. Polyphagia, now this is an interesting one. That means excessive hunger. The reason why, it says here the cells are starving. Well, they're not really. Well, I mean, maybe they are. You have a lot of energy in your bloodstream, but if you're not producing enough insulin or your cells aren't sensitive enough to it, they can't access that sugar, right? And so they are sending out signals that they need more energy. And so you become excessively hungry as a result, even though there's plenty of nutrition in the bloodstream. The cells just can't access it. This is kind of an interesting chart here, describing some of the things that happen with diabetes mellitus. So we're going to work our way down the list here. So you've got diabetes mellitus. What's going to happen? Well, these cells of your body, they can't take up glucose. If it's type 1 diabetes, it's because you're not producing insulin. If it's type 2 diabetes, it's because you're not sensitive to it. But for whichever reason, these cells cannot access their energy from the bloodstream. Okay? So the levels of the sugar remain high in the bloodstream. That's hyperglycemia. And you get glucose in the urine, along with the signs we just talked about: polyuria, polydipsia, and polyphagia. So what does our body do when we don't have enough sugar, when we don't have enough energy for the cells? Well, we do glycogenolysis and gluconeogenesis, right? We talked about those with glucagon, which would be fine in a healthy person who's just hungry. Would be the normal thing to do, access glucose from another way. But when you have diabetes, it's just going to make these other things worse, right? Because glycogenolysis and gluconeogenesis result in the production of more sugar. But that's only making the problem worse because you can't adequately utilize that sugar. So the hyperglycemia and the cardinal signs only accelerate as a result of this. So finally, your cells, they're starving, they can't get this energy from the bloodstream. What do? They resort to something most people don't normally have to utilize, which is called lipolysis. This means using fat directly for fuel rather than converting it into glucose. This is normally only done during starvation or sometimes during pregnancy, but most of the time when you're burning fat, it's actually gluconeogenesis. Okay? But in diabetes, it can result in this alternate version called lipolysis. The reason why we don't normally do that is because lipolysis produces these things called ketones. And ketones can be very damaging to your body at high levels. Okay? So ketoacidosis is a potentially fatal complication. Where is it? Yeah. Excessive ketone formation is a potentially fatal complication of uncontrolled diabetes. When these ketones build up too much, it can lead to coma or even death as a result.
You know that's the new fad diet?
Yeah.
I followed it for a while 'cause it's supposed to help with seizures for my husband, but
Oh, really?
then I was on like a few Facebook pages for it. And everyone kept having heart problems. So I was like, I think we're trading one problem for another with
Yeah.
it, but
So there are diets called ketogenic diets, which the idea is that if you're producing ketones in the body, it's because you're utilizing this fat for fuel to a really high degree.
yeah.
And so the ketones, as far as I understand it, are less of a goal and more of a sign that you're achieving your goal.
Yeah, that's how they
You know, this is something that can be monitored. So people who are diabetic, especially if it's fairly significant, check not only their blood sugar levels but also their ketone levels. And I've talked to a couple people who are on these diets before, and they have similar tests to make sure that the ketones are not getting too high. But if you ask me, you're playing with fire a little bit. It is, I will say, it is unlikely that most people can achieve this ketoacidosis, like dangerous levels, simply through dieting. You know, in diabetes, things will need to have gotten pretty significant, pretty bad before you're in this kind of territory. But yeah, it's definitely not something that you want.
It looked like it works, so I was pretty intrigued.
Yeah. Well, starve yourself long enough, you're gonna lose weight.
Well, they're like eating bacon and losing weight. I was like, this is like the holy grail, but
Yeah, well, the reason why is because it's very similar to like Atkins, right?
yeah, it is.
If you never eat carbs, then your body is not experiencing this blood sugar rise, right? You're having to continuously signal, we need to burn the fat, we need to burn the fat, right? So they can eat a lot of protein and a lot of fats because your body is in that mode, so to speak, of breaking down fats, but it relies on not having carbohydrates. This is probably a good place to take our break, so let's take 15 minutes. We'll meet back up and finish out the chapter.
Alrighty.